the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate you. This time is Zip. Are you here? Yes. Okay. Thanks. Sorry, I can't see that far without my glasses. Honored to have Mr. Zip Kane, who's missions minister for Revolution Church tonight, is going to lead us in invocation. Thank you, Zip.
All right, let's bow our heads. Father, thank you for what you're doing in our community. God, you've brought a lot of great leaders here to this city, and God, we're just so thankful for that. And God, I know there's even more leaders in this room, Father, that you want to raise up. So I pray that you would do that to make the city even greater. Like Chief Merrifield said earlier, Lord, with leadership comes great responsibility. So I just pray for our law enforcement here within the city, for the city council, for the new mayor. And God, I just pray that you would guide them and protect them through the decisions that need to be made. And God, I just pray that you would bring more growth to this city. And also for this council, I just pray that you would bring them wisdom and guidance as growth happens here. And God, I just pray that you continue to use them to even reach the people here that feel like they've been marginalized or even feel like they have no voice. And God, I know that that they do. And God, I just pray that you would help them and guide them through that as well. And Father, we thank you and we love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Kane. So I'd like to welcome you to our Thursday, February 6th council work session. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This time I would entertain a motion to consideration to approve agenda. Are there any amendments or revisions?
Need to make one amendment, please. I'd like to request consideration to add a resolution of opposition to preemption of local building standards for discussion and possible approval as new business item 13H.
13H, new business. Okay. Add that to new business item 13H. Any further revisions or edits? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve as amended.
Motion to approve is amended.
Second? Second. Ms. Kane, Ms. McGrew made the motion, and I believe Mr. Tolan seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion. At this time, on guests and visitors, actually have two proclamations to present tonight. We don't have anyone here to receive them, so I'm just going to highlight them here, and I will give them to our city clerk for safekeeping. But the first one is a proclamation for Arbor Day. And be it resolved that I, Bill Grant, Mayor of Canton, do hereby proclaim Friday, February 21st, 2020 as Arbor Day in the city of Canton. I urge all citizens to make a difference by planting, caring for trees in your yard and in your neighborhood, and by supporting your city government's community forestry program. Proclaimed the 6th day of February 2020. The second proclamation is a proclamation for milkweeds for monarchs, the Canton Butterfly Projects. Now, therefore, I, Bill Grant, Mayor of the City of Canton, do hereby encourage all citizens in the City of Canton to participate in Milkweed for Monarchs, the Canton Butterfly Project, by adding milkweed and nectar-producing plants in home and community gardens in an effort to create habitats for the monarch butterfly. Proclaimed the 6th day of February 2020. Before we get into our regular council meeting tonight, we actually have a couple of public hearings. The first one is public hearing and discussion of case MP 1912-001. Public hearing and discussion of case MP 1912-001. Master Plan Amendment for the Bluffs Pod 1 to allow a telecommunication facility, communication tower at 1130 Bluffs Parkway, Cherokee County property. Community Development Director Ken Patton.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, council members. This case is a master plan amendment for the Bluffs property, specifically Pod 1, and specifically related to 1130 Bluffs Parkway, the Cherokee County Administrative Office Building property. This amendment is to allow for a communication facility, communication tower to be located on that property. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing on the master plan, as well as the follow-up public hearing on the conditional use permit approval on January 21st. Planning Commission did recommend approval of the master plan amendment. I'm here to answer any questions council might have during the course of the public hearing.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Patton. So at this time, we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor, or is the applicant here to present? Again, you would have 10 minutes in total to.
Okay. Hi, I'm Leslie Carroll with Providence Consulting. I'm representing AT&T tonight with these proposals. We are seeking approval of a self-support tower in this pod. At this time, I'll just state that as far as the master plan is concerned, we do need to amend it in order to add this tower in. And then I'll speak about the tower when we get to that one.
Okay. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in favor? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, at this time we'll close the public hearing, and I'll open up to council for discussion and questions. Ms. McGrew.
What is the distance from the tower to the closest residential property?
To the closest residential property, if I'm not mistaken, it is 452 feet.
What is the closest commercial property to that tower?
There's some vacant, undeveloped property to the south that's 148 feet.
Would that property possibly go to residential?
That would require a master plan amendment to come before City Council. Staff has had no indications of a possibility of a master plan amendment. That is always a possibility, but at this time, staff has not heard of any.
To go from commercial to residential, would that require a zoning change?
No, all of this property is on planned development mixed use. It would require a master plan amendment to convert the property from retail commercial to residential.
Thank you.
Mr. Patton, could you remind us the height of this tower and the type of tower?
It is proposed as a lattice tower, and it's going to be 260 feet tall.
Could you give me a reference as far as 260 feet tall, just compared to the tower at exit 19, just for comparison? Do you have a...
And I'm not sure what the height of the one at exit 19 is. It's probably in the maybe 180-foot range. That's the one there by the library at
right.
the industrial park.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a little bit taller. I'm not exactly sure. That tower was installed prior to me coming to work with the city of Canton, but I believe it's probably 180 feet. Could be 200.
Right. And that's a different type. This is a lattice tower, so it's a different type of tower than that tower.
That tower, I believe, is what is called a monopole tower.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any visual reference of what this tower would look like? Or
well, within the CUP application, I believe it does reflect what the lattice tower would look like, and I will apologize to the mayor and council. The master plan application that you have in your document is incorrect. I did not check close enough on computers and loaded up the wrong master plan application. But the application and the follow-up CUP basically is the same application as this. But a lattice tower is a triangular shaped metal structure, 3 legs, and it has lattices throughout all the way up that serve as a ladder and access to the communication facilities that would be located on the lattice tower.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Estes?
I assume the answer is no, but given that we're working with the Cherokee County on the service delivery strategy, does this have any impact with that? Is there any funding or anything like that that would need to be considered, or?
No, sir. None I'm aware of.
No, okay.
And this is on Cherokee County property. Is it close to the Cherokee County, the bluffs, their complex there? Or is that on that property?
It's on the property that the Cherokee County Administration Building is located on. There is an access road that pulls off of the parking lot between the building and the 575 right-of-way that goes down slope kind of behind the building. And this tower location is proposed to be just off of that existing roadway easement area, kind of towards what I would call the southeast corner of the Cherokee County Administration Building. It'll be at a lower elevation than the Cherokee County Administration Building.
But it would still be visible from 575.
If someone's looking, possibly there are some trees and everything between. You can't see the administration building as it is now.
Okay.
You can see some of the residential structures now that all the leaves are off. That's north of the county administration building property.
Do you know if it'd be visible from the reservoir?
During the daylight, probably not. It will have lighting because of the height of it, FAA requirements, that sort of thing. So, you know, the light would be seen at nighttime if someone is out on the reservoir, but I'm not certain that they would actually see it during the daytime because of topo elevations and things of that nature.
Okay. And speaking of the FFA and the airport, have we confirmed that is not an impediment or anything? Is it the height of the tower impeding with the airport or future expansion plans for the airport?
No.
Okay.
There's documentation within the CUP paperwork in your packages that was presented in regards to the airport and the flyway zones, and this tower having no impacts with the operations of the airport.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have one question.
Mr. Hill?
As it relates to the height, being that it's roughly 80 feet taller than the one that the mayor referenced, is there a value? Is there a communication value or a capacity value by it being that much taller than the one that the mayor referenced?
There are basically two reasons, I believe, and the applicant during the conditional use permit probably can address it more. But to fill in some of the gaps with AT&T coverage in the area, plus this is going to be a multi-user tower, and I think they're looking at the potential up to 6 communication users on the tower, and you need a minimum of 10 feet separation between each user along the tower itself. Those are the two reasons I believe that this is proposed to be higher.
Thank you.
Is to fill in some gaps, what the Federal Communications Commission calls the honeycomb for wireless communications.
Thank you.
Mr. Greer?
Does the additional height of this tower require variance, or does it meet our standards?
The UDC does not address anything relative to a lattice tower. It only talks about a monopole tower at 160 feet. City Council can approve, and there's language in our communication facilities that if it's warranted and the applicant provides sufficient documentation, that City Council could approve a taller height.
What are the requirements for keeping the property around the tower cleaned up? or landscaped?
There will be a fence around the base of the tower. It will be landscaped on the inside. This is on Cherokee County property. I'm quite sure that they're not going to let it grow wild, if you will.
Any further questions or discussion? If not, so we'll be considering this at our next council meeting. So the next item, next public hearing and discussion of case CUP 1912-001, public hearing discussion of case CUP 1912-001, conditional use permit to allow a communication facility, communication tower at the Bluffs, Pod 1, located at 1130 Bluffs Parkway, Cherokee County property.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is the companion application to the previous master plan amendment. Canton Unified Development Code does require conditional use permit approval for all new communication facilities that are proposed to be located within the city. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing on January 21st, 2020 of this year. Planning Commission did recommend approval of conditional use permit approval for this tower. I would add and note the applicant probably will address it as well, but after a 10-year period, ownership of this tower goes to Cherokee County.
Okay.
And again, I'm here to answer any questions during the rest of the public hearing process.
Okay. So at this point, we'll open the public hearing and ask the applicant or anyone else who wants to speak in support of this CUP.
So we are seeking approval of this 260-foot self-support tower located at the Cherokee County Administrative Building property. They have agreed to an 80 by 80 ground lease on the backside of the property abutting 575. The coverage area for this tower includes seamless coverage up 575, Technology Park, Great Sky, Town Overlook, and several other residential developments. The additional height requested allowed us to reach these developments as well as provide that seamless coverage up 575. We do have FAA approval for the height of the tower. We've provided a fall zone letter explaining how towers are built to crumble in the leased area and won't fall laterally. The tower has been designed to accommodate 4 additional carriers. With the additional height, we can do 4 additional carriers. If we're limited to our height, other carriers aren't going to want to co-locate at those lower levels. And like he mentioned, this asset is being given to Cherokee County after 10 years of operation. So they'll be able to rent space off to more co-locators and make money off of it. Thank you.
Okay. So anyone else would like to speak in favor of the CUP? Anyone like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and open up for council questions and discussion. Ed, the applicant mentioned the coverage area. I do understand that there are some coverage issues in those areas surrounding the tower. Is that correct? Have we confirmed that? I've heard from residents there.
There are some weak spots in coverage in the north end of the city of Canton. City staff doing inspections within Town Mill. Certain parts of Town Mill, they can't receive any telephone calls. Our tablets that we use for our live inspection reporting, they have to get to certain locations within Town Mill to be able to access servers and follow through with that live field inspection reporting. Of course, our carrier is not the primary carrier with this, but there are coverage gaps within the application package. There are some maps that reflect where there are some coverage area gaps and how this proposed tower would fill in some of those gaps.
Ms. Pepper?
One question I would want to have clarified, Mr. Patton, is I know that it was mentioned that other carriers are able to utilize the facility at that height. I also know that the county is working on a communication system upgrade to an 800 system for emergency services and public safety. I would want to know from the county if they are going to have access through Motorola in that area. I know that they utilize them, and if that tower is one of the towers that's going to be used for that rollout of the 800 system.
The county didn't provide any information when this came before the Planning Commission in regards to that Motorola 800 system. There was a county representative that was at the Planning Commission meeting. I can get with the applicant prior to decision in 2 weeks and get an answer to that question.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or question? Ms. McGrew?
Thank you. Mr. Patton, as I think about the landscaping issue, and Canton is giving more and more consideration to sustainability, this seems like the perfect opportunity for a project of natural landscaping and pollinator gardening, since it won't be near any residential, so it wouldn't be unsightly and it would be fenced off. Do you think the applicant would be amenable to pollinator garden, natural native plantings?
I would tend to think that they probably would. Part of our wireless communication facility requirements does include landscaping as well as screening along with the fence, and staff will be reviewing and approving that as part of the permit process if City Council approves the master plan amendment and conditional use permit approval.
If they think about sustainability, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Ms. Schmidt?
What's the timeline if this project were approved to have it up and working for the residents?
They indicated that once they get approval, they'll have to submit plans for review and approval. Once that's done, construction would begin. Generally, these towers are up and operational within about 8 months or less, depending upon weather.
And since this is on county property, if approved, the construction, would the county be overlooking that construction, or
No,
would it be city?
properties inside the city limits of Canton, permitting and inspections is through the city of Canton.
The county could request, as they have done on other county facilities, to oversee the building of the project, but the city can say no.
Okay.
I do have I guess a follow-up question. I understand the title will pass to the city after 10 years.
County.
I'm sorry?
County.
The county, after 10 years, I'm sorry. What is the anticipated value of that structure, at year 10? And what would the county use it for?
I can get answers as far as the value at the end of the 10-year cycle, but the value to the county is the rental income from the leases from the multiple carriers that were to be located on that tower.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, if we could get that information, and since it is located inside the city canyon, if they're willing to give us some of that fee. So. But any further discussion? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patton. Again, we'll consider this at our council meeting. So at this point, we'll go into our regular council meeting. And item 7 is a consideration to approve the minutes of our January 16th meeting, which you have in your packet. Do you have a motion to approve or any changes or additions to those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved from Ms. McGrew.
Second.
Second from Ms. Schmidt. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All members voted for the motion. Next, we have informational items. We'll begin with downtown updates from our Downtown Development Manager, Ms. Belinda Hardy.
Good evening, everyone. Bear with me because we've got a lot going on. And I'll let you know about everything. I was not able to attend the January meeting, so just want to let you know, as you already do know, our 2019 was amazing. We went out with a bang, and we're so excited about what we're going to be doing this year. Starting with this Saturday. That will be our chocolate walk. It is a sold-out event. It's from 3 until 6. You have a map there in front of you. We've got 19 stops, and the first stop will be at the theater, where everyone will receive their goodie box and their map, and then they will just take off and enjoy the shops and hopefully do some purchasing, but enjoy the tastings that are provided by our businesses. Golf Cars of Canton is providing 2 shuttles, and they will be taking people to Reformation Brewery and the Cotton Mill Exchange and then bringing them back downtown. So tickets went really fast, so hopefully you were able to get one and you can enjoy it, and then we look forward to this being a yearly event. The Cotton Rush exhibit is on display at the Cherokee Arts Center. That will begin this Saturday and runs through the 26th. Their opening ceremony will also be this Saturday between 4 and 6. The Lion King, the live action version, will be playing at the Canton Theater February the 20th with a 2 and a 6 p.m. showing. Tickets are $2 and will go on sale 1 hour prior to showtime. The 2020 Planning Retreat for Main Street will be held on Thursday, February the 27th, beginning at 5:30 here in the auditorium. Mayor and council, you're all invited to attend that. You will receive a more formal invitation, but just wanted you to put that on your calendar if you wanted to save the date. Joel and Alice Cordell will be leading the retreat, so we're looking forward to our planning and getting a good work plan to move forward for this year. I will be attending the 2nd annual Mobilize Main Street event on March 4th and 5th, and we will be highlighting 3 South Georgia communities, Thomasville, Valdosta, and Bainbridge, all of which are successfully utilizing the Main Street approach. So I can kind of check them out and bring some things home. It's prom season, everyone. So hopefully you've been working on your promposals. So Downtown Canton through the Decades Prom is set for Saturday, March 14th. So you can get your pictures made at the Canton Theater. We're going to have 2 different options for you, complete with column and fern, and you can have your little photos. And then you'll come outside and dance in the streets to the great music throughout the decades. This is a promotion for our downtown businesses because leading up until prom, you make dinner reservations, you purchase flowers, you get your hair done, and you purchase an outfit. And we're just trying to put people in the stores again. This is just a really good promotion. First time we've tried it, and hopefully it will be a success for us. Save the date. Lots of things. April 17th and 18th is our Art and Wine Walk. We are going to kick off the Canton First Friday block parties. That is May 1st. Rupert's Orchestra will open us up, and we're adding a 7th concert this year, which will take us all the way through November, and then we'll do Christmas in December. So we will have an event, at least one, every month throughout the year, except for January. So we can plan for that next year. So we're just days away from announcing that. We're getting contracts signed and deposits made now. So we'll be able to release that to the public, but I promise you, you will not be disappointed. The Canton Festival of the Arts is May 2nd and 3rd in Brown Park. The Canton Farmers Market opening day is May 9th and will run through October 24th. The hours will remain the same, 9 until 1. And then last, Music on the Vines Jazz and Blues Festival is scheduled for Saturday, June 27th. That is an all-day free concert featuring arts and blues and jazz. We got a lot going on, people.
We do.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
So if y'all got anything for me? Great.
Just
Thank you
for
so
your great
much.
work and
Thank you.
exciting event lineup. And please thank the Main Street Board for us and all the volunteers that make these events possible, and our city staff who make them seamless for us. Next in your packet, item 8B, we have the review of December financials. These are just for your review only. Our Chief Financial Officer, Nathan Ingram, is here if anyone has any questions for him. Seeing none, we'll move on to item C, which is presentation of school zone speed enforcement information. Chief Officer, well, Steve Merrifield, I think we have Mr. Captain Turner here tonight.
Yes.
So.
A little bit of a change. He's out with his family.
Happy to have you. So.
Yeah. Thank you. If you just bear with me, I got a good bit of kind of facts to go over. This is, we were requested to look into the school zone speed photo enforcement solutions that are available through the state since the passing of House Bill 978, which was passed in 2018. I was tasked with researching the details surrounding the school speed photo enforcement. The ability to use this type of system was approved and made law through House Bill 978, which was passed back in 2018, which actually changed some of the 40 code of the official code of Georgia annotated to allow for these kind of devices within our school zones. We were able to locate several agencies in Georgia who are currently using this technology to leverage technical resources in the area of school speed zones to reduce speeding, to deter accidents, and those kind of things. Duluth PD is one of those that is utilizing a company by the name of Red Speed USA out of Illinois. I was able to contact their sales representative for our area, Mr. Greg Parks, and was just very lucky that day. He was in Duluth and was able to travel up and meet with me within a matter of about an hour, which was a really good meeting where most of this information came from. In meeting with Mr. Parks, he was basically able to advise every detail of the program, and some of those upfront details are this, and I'll just kind of go through some of the lists. There's no cost for installation or maintenance of the program or the device or devices. You obviously have an option to install more than one device in our school zones. We currently have 3, Cherokee High, Teasley Middle, and Hasty Elementary within the city. Along with the speed photo enforcement capabilities of these systems, there's also a camera that serves as a license plate reader that comes standard with the devices, and also a 24-hour, 365-day high-quality video system that will retain that video up to 45 days. Which we would have the ability to use that for, say, investigating accidents or going back and looking at video for any reason, as far as any law enforcement reason. And then the LPR version of that, the license plate readers, say, for example, if you have an individual that comes back registered to a certain vehicle that is within a school area that shouldn't be there for whatever reason, we would actually get a notification through the system of that as well. This system uses an infrared camera, which has a non-flash process. From what I'm being told, this is the only company that has this system. Most of the other systems that are available, they have flash systems, which can be pretty distracting to drivers. This is an infrared camera system that's a non-flash system, which is beneficial. There's a 1-year contract period. It can be auto-renewed. I dug a little deeper in some of the questions with that. If we were to go with a program like this, the city would have an obligation within the first 12 months to, if they did back out within 12 months, they would have an obligation to pay either $10,000 or the amount of funds that were collected up to that point, whichever is less, is what I was told. And that's after the first year. And then every year thereafter, there's no penalty for early withdrawal. There's a Georgia DOT permit and application process is required for this. The company would complete all the necessary application and permit requests through the DOT process and would also provide the engineering and the drawings and the diagrams that would be required for that at no cost, no upfront cost for the city. Red Speed, the company, will also complete a feasibility study at any and all schools that you may be interested in putting a program in like this. So they will actually go out, put up their cameras, do speed studies, see if there is a problem, see if there is a speed problem, which is actually part of the DOT permitting process. You have to do that prior to, before they would even allow you to have application or permit to put one there. One caveat, permission would need to be obtained from the Cherokee County School Board to utilize their property in order to put this kind of system in place. The company would also provide public service announcements and other public educational materials to the community before any program was initiated or any enforcement was also started as well. They provide that. So once you get the system in place, that's kind of the initial startup. If you were to put a system in place, there's a lot of things that you would do post-program. Some of that would be 30-day warning periods before any citations would be issued. There's a contract in place where there's a split in fines of 65% to the city, 35% to Red Speed. And the way that that would work is it's all online based. The company would actually send a violation to anyone that may be violating the speed limit within the school zones. First offense is $75. Any second or subsequent offenses are $125. And there's a 2-level review from the company. They would review the video, they would review the radar speed, and they would determine that that is the vehicle, that is the tag number, it is valid through the state system, coming back to that registered owner. And then they would send that to another person within the company. They do a 2-level review, and then they would send that information to Canton Police, where we would actually have a police officer review that independently and verify that as well. And then he would do a confirmation through their web-based system. And then once that confirmation was made, then Red Speed, the company, would actually send a violation to the violator based on whose registered vehicle it is. I say all that to say also, this is a civil infraction. This is not anything that's criminal in nature. Whereas if you were to get a speeding ticket from one of the police officers in the city, you typically would have points against your driver's license for that, depending on the amount of speed over you would be. And this is written in the law that it is a civil infraction, so there's no points, there's no insurance penalties, there's no moving violations that are against your driver's license. You may be wondering, well, if they want to fight it, how do they fight the citation? There's a process for that as well that would go to an administrative review with the police department, with the officer, sort of like an administrative hearing. He would sit down with the violator, show them the same information that was emailed to them, a video clip, pictures that shows the speed, and they would sit down with the violator and speak to them about that. And then if they still want to contest it, the company would maintain a docket, and they would work with our city municipal court, and they would feed that information to the municipal court. And depending on how the municipal court wanted to set that up with the company, if they wanted to have 30 cases before they held time in court to hear those cases, they would work those details out. Then they would go in front of our municipal judge, and he would hear the case. So those are just some of the highlights of the program. Like I said, it does get pretty technical. In your packets is House Bill 978. There's also in your packet the Department of Transportation rules governing the permitting process. And there's a little more information also to the company itself. From what I understand, Red Speed is not the only company, but from what I'm being told, they're the only company that has the infrared technology. The other companies have flash technology. So I believe there's probably about 3 companies total right now that are doing this. Red Speed has over about 35 municipalities and counties that are actually doing this program. Henry County is one. I spoke with Lieutenant Rosin with Henry County PD, and their program has been extremely successful in lowering the number of accidents and lower speeders in those areas. So those are just some of the highlights. Like I said, there's a good bit more to it, but if you have any questions, be happy to answer those questions.
We appreciate the information. Some great information, a great overview. I know there's a lot to consider, and I know we just kind of asked you to bring information back, but are there any questions at this time? I know we may want to go into this later, but Ms. Smith, sorry. Ms. Brooks-Smith.
Is it fair to say that there is a speeding problem in front of Cherokee High School? Based on how often I see patrol officers out there, I would guess the answer is yes.
Yeah, I would actually have to pull the numbers to actually give you a really good answer.
Okay.
But part of this program is they will come in and do a feasibility study at all 3 locations or one location, one of the 3 schools or all 3 of the schools. at no cost to the city, and there's no strings attached.
Okay.
You know, after that study, if they say, you know, there is a huge problem, that's a decision for you to make. If they say there's not a problem, then you probably wouldn't be permitted to have it anyway.
Gotcha. Thank you.
A lot of the additional patrols out there are based upon feedback from parents or residents that
Right.
perceive there to be a problem. So this would kind of give us the, you know, true numbers as to whether or not that exists.
Okay.
Any further information? Questions? Okay. Thank you, Captain Turner. Okay, item 8D, presentation and discussion of alcohol ordinance revisions. City Attorney Bobby Dyer.
If you don't mind, I'll just do that from here.
Yes.
I think you are given at your seat the final version as approved by the Alcohol Ordinance Committee meeting that met on Tuesday afternoon after the retreat. The committee approved that version, so it is now before the City Council for however you want to act on it. I wanted to go over some of the highlights of what was changed, just so you'll be aware. It's a pretty lengthy document. I didn't do a red line version. I feel like I had done my damage to the trees in the last couple of weeks with this alcohol ordinance, but I'm happy to do a red lining. I can send one digitally and let you decide whether to print it or not. If it ends up being a lot of red because we did change some of the things pretty substantially. The area where we did make a lot of changes and was in the license, qualifications, and application process. Some frustrations that the staff has had. We had a meeting, the city manager, myself, Mr. Ingram, and the police department, who handles the background checks and so forth. So we kind of worked through our experiences with that. So the biggest change we made on the licensee qualifications is, well, actually we didn't change much on that. It was the server permits we changed, but the licensee can be a corporation, but has to have an individual, and then the individual has to meet the requirements. You have to have a manager on site. It's not a permitted manager, and there was some confusion in our ordinance about that. This would just be a manager in the usual sense of the word, meaning the person in charge at that moment. And so at all times, there has to be either the licensee or a manager on site. One change we did make is we made the manager responsible for any violations by a server. So they're jointly responsible and can be cited. We felt like the committee felt like that was a good way to approach responsibility without us having to put a whole lot of regulation in place. We added a revocation process that we did not actually have before, so that has been badly needed. As I mentioned about the servers, we eliminated any kind of criminal background check for servers, except if the police department would check for outstanding warrants. We would not issue a server's permit to anyone who should be arrested here or in another state. But otherwise, a person can qualify to be a server. And I should say this: if you adopted this ordinance, it would apply for next year's licensing processes. It's already been done for 2020. So this is a good time of year to do that. The ordinance reinstates the entertainment district that had sunsetted in October and puts that back in place with some changes. In an attempt to simplify that a little bit, it would require that they use a cup provided by the city, and so the city would have to make those available. But it does provide that the entertainment district hours would be every day and not limited to the weekend. As far as the on-consumption premises requirements, the committee proposed retaining the 50% food requirement, making that citywide and not having different ratios for different areas. We did change the provision of a specific kind of kitchen that you had to have. So that was an impediment for a lot of people. We're inquiring about sort of alternative ways of doing it, so that the thing about the 4-pot sink and all that's been eliminated. and we allow prepared food to come from outside, as long as it's prepared at a commercial kitchen licensed by the state. So that would allow food truck possibilities, as well as other sources of the restaurant doesn't necessarily have to make the food there. It does require that they be a restaurant, so they have to sell prepared food. And the 50% requirement is still there. That's pretty much the highlights. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm happy to get you the red line showing what's changed from the current ordinance to what's proposed.
Okay. Thank you. A couple of things I wanted to highlight that especially on the license and portion application, and really throughout all these changes, the police department was involved and reviewed all these changes with us, and we want to thank them for their input on this ordinance that has needed updating, comprehensive updating for quite a while. I think there were also some changes that brought it up to bring it in line with state standards, or we at least reviewed for that.
I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that because that is a fairly, we adopted the state distance requirements.
Okay, thank you.
We were beyond those.
Okay. And I especially want to thank our committee chaired by Ms. McGrew, and also including Ms. Schmidt and Mr. Tolan, who asked them to review this and bring us back recommendations in March. And so I want to congratulate them on being a month early. Appreciate their great work. I know they put hours into this and met many times and put a lot of hard work into this, so we appreciate that. So,
one thing I did fail to mention that's probably of interest is the server training that is required. We talked about the possibility of having that training being done online. So the ordinance does allow for the possibility of online training rather than the police department having to do it in person.
Right. We did have a lot of, complaints from our restaurant owners and how difficult that was for their servers to come out after hours, and I think also the staff just from the police department and having to do that at night. So I think that is a much needed improvement as well. So any discussion? Ms. McGrew, yes.
I wanted to thank Mr. Dyer, who was at every meeting, and Mr. Peppers. The committee, Ms. Schmidt and Mr. Tolan did a wonderful job. Many person hours were put into this. Mr. Ingram was a great help. It was a lot of work and needed to be done, and we were glad to do it. We meet state law, and we've made it simpler for the public to understand, for our businesses to understand, and we have made it possible for our citizens to have what they had asked us to give them.
I agree. And again, I think simplification of the entertainment district and everything was also based on the previous data and metrics we got from when the entertainment district was in place last year, which indicated reduction in crime and no additional cleanup or manpower. And again, as we stated before, anytime if we do have any issues with the ordinance going forward, it's an ordinance that can be changed and to make sure it is effective and the best ordinance we can have possible. So, any other questions or comments?
That would it could go on the next agenda at the next meeting for vote if you did want to do it that way.
So it is an ordinance revision, so it does require 2 readings by our process, and if we did decide to do that, this could be considered the first reading. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you. So we'll move on into just other announcements by mayor, council. I just had one quick one. I would like to invite everyone back tonight, not tonight, but later on tonight, but at the next meeting, February 20th, for a brief State of the City address at 6 p.m. We'll start that at the first of the meeting, and I'll give you a brief highlights of what we've accomplished in the past year and an exciting sneak preview of what you can expect coming up this next year. We've got a lot of things to report, a lot of exciting things we're working on that we'll share some bits of that. So please invite your neighbors and friends and family to come back for the State of the City, and see what things we're going to be doing to move Canton forward. So do we have any other announcements? Okay. We have no consent items since it's a work session, and we'll move into old business. Old business item A, discussion and possible action on conservation easement affidavit by increasing, where applicable, the state stream buffer from 25 to 50 feet along the Etowah River for the Etowah River Park Trail extension. Mr. Peppers, I think this is what we discussed. Would be necessary to put our new trail extension in place.
It is. We also skipped over the 10-minute public input.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can do that after the old business items if you would like.
Okay, let me do that. I'm sorry. I did miss the public input, which is very important. We had, if I can find this sheet. Thank you, Nick. We have 3 members signed up. I did want to remind everyone we have closed. If you did sign up to speak on the 2 cases for Great Sky, our public hearing has closed for that, so you would not be allowed to speak about that in public input. So just want to remind you that. So if you did, just wanted to remind everyone of that. Our first speaker, Clint Baber, was that your subject? Okay. So I'm sorry you wouldn't be allowed to speak on that tonight. So did you have anything else you wanted to speak on? Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Valerie Wood? Same thing? Okay. Thank you. And Mark Green? Okay. Thank you.
Why don't you explain why? Sir?
Okay. So that went quick. So now we'll move back into old business. And again, item A, discussion and possible action on the conservation easements.
This is just a requirement from the state as it relates to our projects along the trail. We discussed it at the last meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
So we have a motion approved for Mr. Estes.
Second.
A second from Ms. McGrew. Is there any other discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All members present voted for the motion. Item B, discussion and possible action of GMEBS restated adoption agreement, Human Resources Director Lori Waters. Ms. Waters, I believe she discussed this at our last meeting.
Yes, Mayor and Council, thank you so much. Mr. Dyer may can elaborate a little more. We are needing a vote on this tonight because I have to return it to GMABS by February 28th. Does anyone have any questions? It's just a simple restatement of the plan to follow IRS regulations.
All right. Essentially,
Just a motion to approve. Thank you.
Second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? All members in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All members voted for the motion. Thank you, Ms. Waters. Old business item C. Discussion and possible action of case MP 1911-001 for Great Sky Lot Holdings LLC to amend the master plan to move the number of units around within the various pods to reduce the lot widths within various pods. Community Director, Development Director, Mr. Pat.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is a master plan amendment for Great Sky. There was a public hearing held before the Planning Commission. Public hearing held before Canton City Council. This matter has been tabled. Previously, the applicant, through their attorney, did submit a request earlier today for City Council to consider tabling this until the next meeting. Planning Commission did recommend approval of the master plan amendment. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions, discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the master plan amendment for Great Sky as requested by the developer with the following conditions. The existing master plan related to Pod 16 carries forward from the current master plan and is not changed. and that the total number of townhomes or duplexes allowed in the undeveloped pods as amended be capped at 100 dwelling units.
Okay. So we have a motion.
I'd like to second that.
Mr. Tolan second the motion. Any discussions or questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All member present voted for the motion. Motion passes. So item D, discussion and possible action of case CUP 1911-001 for Great Sky Lot Holdings LLC requesting approval for 798 apartments at Pod 16 at Great Sky. Mr. Patton.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is the companion for the master plan amendment. This is conditional use permit approval for Pod 16 to allow for 798 apartments. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing, recommended approval. City Council has conducted a public hearing on this as well. Same in regards to the applicant's attorney did submit a request for council to consider to table this matter for 2 weeks. I am here to answer any questions you might have in regards to the CUP application.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Patton? Discussion? None? Ms. McGrew?
Motion to deny.
Motion denied by Ms. McGrew.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Estes. So we have motion denied is CUP. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes to deny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
council members.
Mr. Patton. New business. Item A, discussion and resolution to adopt capital improvements plan, CIE, and 5-year short-term work plan for impact fee program. Mr. Patton, you're up again.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, council members. Last fall, the first part of this process, public hearing in regards to the annual update for the capital improvements element 5-year short-term work plan was conducted. There was approval for a resolution to transmit to Atlanta Regional Commission, Georgia Department of Community Affairs. We did receive some comments, questions from DCA staff. The staff has addressed and answered all questions, advisory comments from Georgia Department of Community Affairs and what you have within the application package tonight. This is a requirement to be able to have Canton's impact fee program. I'm here to answer any questions you might have about the process or about the capital improvements element 5-year short-term work plan.
All right. So my understanding, it was really the same thing we passed before with just a footnote required by DCA.
Well, there were, the main change, we had to add a footnote that you saw on the year-end financial. We had some impact fee credits for roads and parks and recreation, and our administrative fees that were collected went above the state mandate of 3% of the total amount of impact fees. And we addressed that through a footnote on the year-end financial is the reason that that fee went over the state mandate of 3%. Georgia DCA via email as well as telephone calls indicated there was no problem with that footnote. They have approved that with other communities in the past, but that was the big item that. Plus, they wanted us to show that the capital improvements element 5-year short-term work plan, Canton's impact fee program, was a citywide district.
Okay. So any questions on that? And does this resolution be adopted tonight? Or something?
No.
Okay. So we'll consider adopting that in the next
Correct.
meeting. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So new business item B, discussion of 2020 health insurance benefits renewal. Human Resources Director Lori Rodgers.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Our plan year runs April 1st through March 31st each year. We're fortunate to have Mr. Matt Bivell here with us from MSI Benefits Group. They've worked hard for us over the past years on our renewal. In your package, you do have their recommendation or their suggested renewals. The current plan we have with no changes would require a 13% increase, an annual net difference to the city of $115,296. The current plan with some minor changes would attribute us or get us a 10% increase, which is an annual net difference of $86,609 annually. The changes would include increased copays from $25 to $30 for a primary care physician, $50 to $60 for a specialist, $60 to $75 for urgent care, and $150 to $350 for the emergency room copay. In addition to that, it would increase our pharmacy deductible for tiers 2 through 4, which is mostly your brand name drugs and higher, from $200 to $300 before it would pick up with copays. Our dental, vision, and life insurance has no changes, no increase for this year. And our long-term disability has a slight increase of 2.86%, which is a net difference of $564. Along with, if we stay with Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they will include our $5,000 wellness grant that we've received for the last couple of years that's afforded us water bottles, lunches, lunch boxes, things to help promote a healthier lunch. We have also done a sports bag, a backpack for gym memberships to kind of encourage people to be able to go work out as a healthy thing. We will look at this upcoming year, if we stay with them, to see how we would like to utilize that $5,000 for this coming year. They've been real good to work with. We have been with Blue Cross Blue Shield for approximately 18 years. It does not require us to stay, but it does afford us the opportunity to negotiate a little stronger because we have been with them so long. Willing to answer any questions you may have, and including Mr. Matt Bidwell, if he can answer anything for you.
Can you confirm, I believe we had 10% increase built into this year's budget, is that correct? So the second option would meet that. So Ms. Waters, you and your team have a recommendation out of these
Our recommendation is for the 10%. We feel like is not a detriment to the employees. And two, it's an encouragement to help them understand how much the city already pays for them. Because for an employee only, the city pays 90%, which is a huge benefit to our employees. And by them attributing the cost associated with that, we will increase the payroll deductions by the 10%. So it's not a huge hurt, but it also, we're trying to do educational tools with them. Along with MSI, they're going to help us hopefully promote more educational tools, because we have looked at our current plan. There is a health and wellness reward that's built into our program. And all you have to do is do a health risk assessment online, a test to non-smoking if you're a non-smoker, and get your annual physical and your flu shot, and you'll receive a $200 master credit card from Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's a pretty simple thing, and even though we have a low participation rate, so we're going to try to do more things to promote that, as well as with this particular plan, we have 12 live health online visits. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's where you can call remotely and see a doctor and then call in your prescriptions. Well, that's 12 visits a year per member that's free in this particular plan. Even with all that, we had a high usage of an emergency room for non-emergency reasons, as determined by the insurance carrier, for headaches, nausea, things that could be utilized if you had a primary care physician. So we're going to try to promote that stronger this year, but also when you have to take a bite of the pie, so to speak, to be able to let the employees know that things do increase. And with us not utilizing it as properly as we should, this is maybe a step in the right direction, because we don't keep it moving forward. For a long time, we kept it stagnant, and that's not, it increases the burden on the city.
Okay.
But this does not require a vote. This is just to bring it to our attention. We do it as soon as possible so that we can have the open enrollment scheduled for March.
Right. Any questions?
I do have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
First, the more than doubling ER visits, I'm sure that is partially designed to send people to minor emergency care centers. Is that initiative going to be broadly announced to staff? I'm I'm sure there's an initiative, but is that something that staff is going to be well aware of?
Yes, sir. We are planning on having, hopefully, educational meetings. MSI is always willing. They are always on site for open enrollments. We encourage employees to come, as well as we do a benefit summary that we send out to each and every member. We encourage them to review that, and we can go even a step further and try to hold not mandatory meetings, but strongly encouraged meetings for them to come and be aware of what their plan entitles them.
That's great, because obviously that can come as a bit of a shock when your out-of-pocket goes from, in the ones to $350.
Yes, sir.
The other, I guess, comment is there, you said that the wellness initiative was lightly participated. What exactly are you guys planning on doing as it relates to increased awareness to staff in terms of the value of participating in wellness? Because it's sweeping across the country, and it's a very valuable tool that it'd be a shame people can't take advantage of it.
Yes, sir. We are hoping to, there again, in these meetings, have an educational meeting for our employees. It does get a little difficult when we have our officers and stuff that's multi-shift, but Captain Turner informed me tonight that he actually did it and did send out an email himself saying, hey, I did this. You can take a few minutes to do this. It's very important to do that health risk assessment tools to help you going forward. So we will not only do that, along with we send out flyers. We now have an employee newsletter that my assistant has so brilliantly set up that we send out to all employees that we put notices in. We do that monthly at the first of the month, so we're going to put it in that as well. That goes out to all employees, along with educational meetings. That's about all that we can do, is to bring it to their attention and encourage the participation.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
Anything else?
Thank you very much. I know the work and effort that goes into this. I have to do it every year for my 4 employees. Again, I can't imagine what it takes to get this. And my increase is always much more than that. But thank you, and thank you for our partners as well. So
Thank you so much.
thank you. So item C of new business, discussion of change order number 2 to Atkins for construction management services for State Route 20 utility relocation. Utility Engineer Dave Fabian.
Believe it or not, GDOT has indicated they are going to bid the State Route 20 widening project the end of March. So,
This year?
This year. So, which includes all this utility relocation. And we needed the change for construction management services over the next 3 years. As well as for ensuring we've got temporary construction easements to relocate some. If you may remember, when this project started, the city, as utility owner, is only responsible for the design. The state is picking up all the construction costs. So, but in this proposal is good for is projected over 3 years or 2.5 years of the project. So,
And this is this correct? Is this just to the 20 to Scott Road to?
Yeah, this is from I-575 to Scott Road.
And they're expecting just that improvement, that stretch, to be a 3-year process?
That's what GDOT has said.
Okay. And the actual physical relocation of the utility services will be paid for by GDOT, by the state?
Correct.
And this contract is for Atkins to supervise?
Well, to do some periodic inspections, to questions, to do some shop drawing review, to coordinate any technical questions with the contractor. And it is a time and materials, so it's whatever they, the hours that they charge. It's not a lump sum.
Don't we also have a major sewer line in that location? Does that have to be
we're
relocated?
going to have to relocate a 20-inch water line to
Water line, okay.
tower, yeah.
And they'll be doing that as well,
Yes.
so, okay. Questions, comments? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item D, discussion of proposed T-Mobile cell tower lease agreement. We've kind of discussed this a couple times, but Mr. Ingram.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I apologize. I probably should have brought it to lose attention, the clerk's attention, that this should have been old business. My apologies on that.
No problem.
This is brought up again. We've discussed this, I think, 3, maybe even 4 times. T-Mobile has come back to us and have asked 2 items. Instead of 5-year renewable terms, they would request only 2 5-year renewable terms. So they've asked for a shorter term. And they've also asked, instead of a 30-day notice, to have a 1-year notice. Now, considering that there's a lot of antenna structures on that tank, and that it would take them some time to find another spot, to not have no disruption of service to their customers, I can somewhat understand their request for a little bit longer time, a year. I'd appreciate any comments from y'all. And then one last item, and maybe Mr. Dyer can suggest, is I'm not sure our next move, whether if y'all do agree to these, do we request that council sign the agreement and just forward it back to T-Mobile and say, if y'all accept, y'all sign, or just we'll want to volley it back to them and get a final draft back to council maybe in a month or 2.
So remind me again, like this, before we had what they're offering, this version versus last version, we both had option to.
To back up just a little bit, the original one called for 5 year periods to renew with a 30-day notice, but they wanted the ability to void the contract. They were not giving us the ability to void the contract, and I don't think any of us liked that. We wanted both entities. Well, then they say, well, if both entities have that opportunity to terminate the contract, okay, let's just do it for 2 5-year periods, up to an additional 10 years. And they wanted a year's notice.
Do we have really any incentive to do that?
The tank is not in use right now, is it? That's the Bryan Center tank. So it's a vacant, if you will, tank. It's not being used right now. We earn about $36,000 a year in revenue off this rental agreement.
When does the current agreement end?
2024.
So the current agreement doesn't end until 2024?
That's correct. We're getting a little.
Would we be better off to table these discussions until later?
But they can renew it. It keeps going past that. But
yes, they're asking to renew now. I believe part of the reason
this
they're
is an
wanting to
early
renew
renewal. If we come up to a renewal time again, they got 2 more?
No, we're in the last 5 years.
Last 5 years.
We're in the last 5 years. I'm assuming they're wanting to go ahead and get a jump on this is because there's probably a lot of things involved with getting a new antenna site like y'all.
If they renewed the current one, though, it'd be renewing it 5 more 5-year terms?
10 years, two 5-year terms beyond that for an additional 10 years.
But we can cancel with a year's notice.
Right.
We or they have to give the other party 1 year prior to that 5-year period.
Oh.
Under the proposal.
Not just any time, but only at the end of a 5-year.
Yeah, under the current term, we can terminate the agreement as of 2024.
So just to be clear, it's 2 renewals, so it's a total of 15 years, correct?
10 years.
I
They're
thought you
wanting
said
to renew.
2 renewals.
They want to renew it for 2 additional 5-year terms.
And they still have
10 years.
4 years to go.
They do.
So 14 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Would there be any interest of another carrier to lease the same location?
I would assume Market would drive that. I don't know.
Mr. Greer, did you have a question or comment?
Would this new contract tack on to the end of the one we have now?
Yes, ma'am.
And would we realize any greater income, or would the rate remain the same?
Yes, actually, currently we're at 32 or 34,000. They're going to increase it to 36,000 with a CPI adjustment for each of those for the next renewal.
What does staff recommend? Do you have a recommendation yet?
Well, one, I didn't like the non-option to renew. I wanted the city to have the option because we don't know what's going to happen with the Bryan Center and that infrastructure
5, 10, 15 years down the road, it may, council may want to demolish that site and put something else there. It's for lack of a better word, saying it's free money.
I'm sorry?
Free money. There's $36,000 a year. I just want to make sure that our utility department and that infrastructure is not tied up at our own expense.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments?
It is worth noting, I will say, that cities are usually not in the business of cell towers.
I know on our Ridge Pine tank, we have some cell towers, and I know we did have some issues when we were doing some work on that tank, getting the cell companies to come out and move their equipment so that we could do the work that needed to be done. Does this agreement provide for that situation?
It'll have something about
Right.
us not messing with their equipment. Right.
Yeah. Because we modified this agreement back 2 or 3 years ago, and there was some discussion about that, and gives them the opportunity to add another antenna if they want to add so they already have that ability.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, item E, discussion proposed resolution to establish cable and video franchise fees. Mr. Ingram?
Yes. If council will recall, we entered into an agreement with the GMA Local Government Services Division to audit our franchise. This is a one-year agreement. When doing so, when they picked up the audit, and they did notice that we're potentially not getting as much franchise as we should with video cable. They specifically mentioned the T-Mobile UVerse as an example. And Mr. Tim McGraw with the Local Government Services sent me a list of all the governments in the state of Georgia that have already adopted a resolution. He made a point that the city of Canton is not on that list, that we need to pass a resolution to make sure that we're getting those franchise fees from T-Mobile UVerse as well as any other video over cable. He has put this resolution before us, and there's some things that we need to get this passed for council's consideration. If they agree, get this passed, and then we need to submit it to the Secretary of State so that we can effectively put those video cable companies on notice that we're going to require them to pay the 5% franchise fee as well. He said without that technically those companies can essentially make their own franchise fee rate, which oftentimes they do at 0.
So this is at 5%. Is that the highest possible?
It is the highest for state requirements, and that's what virtually looking down the list, virtually everybody does at 5%. And I know the county's passed theirs, but I think there's some other cities in the county that have not yet adopted this as well.
Is this time sensitive? When do we need to get
No, it is not.
Okay. But right now, is franchise fees we're not currently collecting?
Yes, we're like with AT&T UVerse, we're not getting any franchise.
Okay. Do we have any idea how much income that may generate?
No, I do not. Now, obviously, after their audit, I'm sure they could provide this information. But basically, to reiterate, he said this is something y'all need to do. So that's right out of the gate. He said even before the audit, y'all need to get this passed.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Any questions? Thank you. So item F, discussion proposal of SP 7 budget amendment for ERP Trail System, Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Ingram.
Mayor and Council,
standing.
If you will, the last two items on the screen are those budget amendments that we discussed at the last meeting, and I mentioned I would bring back to council that are, if you will, just some house cleaning to take care of, to make sure we're not expending funds that we're technically not budgeted for. We have the funds. Council has already stated that we're going to use sales tax for
for the trails along with impact fees. So this is, once again, just some house cleaning that needs to be done to.
So these are the two budget amendments
Yes, Mayor.
to fund the trail extension projects that we approved in the last meeting. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions, comments? And do we need to make those, we can approve those in the next meeting? Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank you. And we'll move on to item H, which we added, which was a resolution maintaining local controlling of building standards on residential dwellings. Just to give our citizens a quick background, last year we sent a similar resolution. There was a House bill that was proposed that would eliminate local municipalities' ability to control local housing standards, building standards, basically taking control out of us to be able to eliminate what your neighbor could do next door. You know, could put up a house with a thatched roof, or in a neighborhood, vinyl siding adding when it wasn't there. So we opposed that last year, as did a lot of other municipalities, and it kind of died. It's back with a vengeance this year, and not only as a House bill, but also as a Senate bill. So the developers have done a very good job of lobbying our state legislators, and so we felt it very necessary to send a very strong new resolution from the Mayor Council from the City of Canton in support of our locally established building standards for residential dwellings, and specifically opposing House Bill 302 and Senate Bill 172. We'll be sending this resolution. It'll be delivered to each member of the Georgia House of Representatives and Senate representing the City of Canton, and made available for distribution to the public and the press. So we're going to be sending this directly to them. We're going to share it with our citizens. We'll be posting it on our city website and social media page, and I think council members will be sharing as well. And we really want you to share it with your senators. We want you calling them and your legislators, because this is really important that we as a city, we're able to define and regulate how our city grows, and that our city grows in a manner that's consistent with our citizens' vision for that city and the quality and look and character that we all hold dear about Canton. So it is very critical that we do this. So we're going to be sending the strong resolution tomorrow. So thank you.
Council will approve it. I'll be happy to put it in the mail.
Yes. So do we need a motion to approve, Ms. McGrew?
Second.
Second. Ms. Schmidt? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All members voted for the resolution. Thank you. Next, the city manager's report.
I don't have one. I came up here in case I needed to explain this, but you.
Why'd you go down there then?
I'll just walk back up.
Thank you for making the effort, though. It was a good showing. So we've worked him hard this week. So council introduced items. I'm not aware of any. Are there any? Okay. Mayor's report. I just have a couple of quick things. We have a board in place for the Canton Place CID, which is a community improvement district, and it basically, the board reviews how the funds collected in that district at Canton Place development are distributed between the projects there. The city has two representatives on that board, one citizen, which is Mr. Dennis Burnett, and one council member. I had previously been serving on that committee as a council member, and tonight I'm going to appoint Ms. Schmidt to replace me on that committee, and part of her position as the chair of the Economic Development Committee. So I'm going to name her to my position that board. So. And the next, I just wanted to mention that Mayor and Council had a very productive retreat the past 2 days. We were in Rome off-site for a couple of days and discussed our plans for the future and creating a roadmap to grow Canton in a responsible and thoughtful manner. And I just wanted to thank all of our council members for showing up and being ready to work and rolling up their sleeves and their great energy and ideas. I have all the council retreats I've been to since I've been involved here. I have never left more excited or inspired or just ready to get to work and to make these things happen. I want to thank our city manager, Mr. Peppers, for his great leadership in that, and Mr. Dyer for showing up, and Mr. Ingram as well, who contributed a lot to our efforts there. So it was very productive. We'll be sharing more about this retreat and the initiatives that are coming out of that as the weeks unfold and days unfold. I'll be mentioning a little bit of it in my State of the City address next week, but stay tuned. I think you're all going to be excited about the direction we're going. And again, I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it over and over again. It'll start, begin, end with citizen input along every way. You're going to have plenty of opportunities for sharing your thoughts of how you want Canton to grow and develop, and we're excited about the process and look forward to it. So that's all I have this evening. If there's nothing else, I'll maintain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Tolan.
Second.
Second, Mr. Estes. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All members voted to adjourn. Thank you all and have a great evening. Drive safely. What's so funny?